Good evening and welcome to Journeys to Justice. We have got packed evening for you all. Um, my name is Claire. I work for Sabeel-Kairos UK, and we are a charity that works to advocate for Palestinian human rights. I will put our website on the chat later on in the evening. I will also put the link for any of you if you would like to donate towards our partner charity, Sabeel, in Jerusalem. Any funds raised this evening will be going to the humanitarian work they're doing on the ground in Palestine. So we'd love you to donate if you're able to. Part of my job with Sabeel-Kairos is having the privilege to take delegations of people out to experience life in Palestine. Now, this is something called the Influencer Project. And basically, I recruit people who have an influence, a sphere of influence, people who have an audience who will listen to them. And it can be from any walk of life. It might be politics, it might be sports, it might be church or religious life. I took my first delegation in February, and it was a group of creatives. And I'm just so delighted that 6 of them who came with me in February to Jerusalem are here tonight to share some of their stories of what they experienced whilst they were on that delegation in Jerusalem. So each person's going to have 10 minutes. I'm going to be really strict on the time because we've got so much to get through. So I might just give you some gentle reminders if it looks like the time is running out. They've got slides, they've got stories to tell. And so I'm going to let them introduce themselves. You don't want to have to spend the whole evening listening to me. And we're going to start with Linda first. And Linda is going to give us a little bit of an overview and a picture of the situation that Palestine finds itself in. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Linda. Please do put yourselves on mute. We will have time at the end for questions and answers. So if you do have questions, there will be time, hopefully, for those at the end. So Linda, thank you so much.
Right, well, welcome. I'm really enjoying being here, and it was an amazing experience. But I feel that you really have to start with the background, which is why I really wanted to do the history. So I'm going to whiz through this because I kept doing a different PowerPoint and trying to get it shorter and shorter. So I'm highly expecting Claire to tell me to be quiet at the end of it. But there's so many things that are said about Palestine and Israel, things that are said by a lot of people, and a lot of them are wrong. And I think this is a really important issue that we need to look at when we're looking at our experiences of Palestine and what is being said on the main media. So I am going to go back quite a long way. And I'm going to look at 4 main issues really and try and give the background very quickly. So statement 1, you may have heard that God gave this land to the Jews specifically, and that's a justification. So I'm going to start with Jericho is one of the oldest standing villages or towns now that has actually the longest in the whole of the world. Sorry, I'm a bit garbled. And it's the longest lived city in the entire world. And this particular picture is from 4500 BC, which shows you how long ago it was inhabited. But Abraham, who is the father to 3 religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, actually is dated to 2000 BC. And he started his journey in in modern day Iraq, traveled round and came through Jericho. And he actually bought land near Hebron from a Hittite in order to bury Sarah. So I just want to give this bit of a cultural background. The biblical promise, there's a lot of different things in the Bible, but the main thing was the promise in the Bible was conditional. It wasn't a granting of God's land, even if many people don't believe in the Bible. But if you do, there are many different verses, including Leviticus, which is one of the oldest verses, that quite simply says, if you do not keep God's law, the land will vomit you out. Jeremiah keeps it much more clearly. If you really change your ways, your actions, and deal with each other justly, if you do not oppress the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow, you do not shed innocent blood in this place, and if you do not follow other gods to your own harm, then I will let you live in this land I gave to your ancestors. Again, Deuteronomy speaks even more severely. The whole of chapter 28 has the first half, if you follow God's laws, you'll be blessed. Verse 15 onwards, if you don't follow God's laws, then actually you will be cursed. So I'm just saying the context of all of those issues to do with the fact that is the land given to people by God? The land physically of modern day Israel was given by the Balfour Declaration in 1917, before which was the British Foreign Secretary. And he actually wrote a letter to Lord Rothschild, many of you will know this, saying His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. There is an organisation that was called Balfour Organisation that says we've reneged on at least the second half, and it wasn't Britain's opportunity to give any land anyway. Britain wasn't even there. However, it wasn't given the mandate to look after Palestine from 1917 to 1948. So the statement number 2, there has never been a country called Palestine. I'm sure on your social media you've had lots of people who've said that. And people say the Romans called it Palestine in AD 72 when they destroyed Jerusalem as a revenge for an uprising in Judea. But there are many references that land has obviously been called many different things, and it's always been called the area, the district of Syria. And Herodotus in 500 BC, he's a Greek author, and he wrote about Palestine. So it was written down at least 500 BC. And Greek writers, Roman writers, and many other Roman Judean writers have referred to Palestine. So there absolutely was a Palestine thousands of years ago. And when the British came in 1917, there were a population of approximately 50,000 Jews and 500,000 Muslim and Christian Arabs, and they gave a British passport with the Palestine from the country of Palestine and Palestinian coins, which absolutely shows and proves that the British decided that there was, in fact, a recognised state under the British. I'm not quite sure how it was unstated. The third statement, a land without a people for a people without a land. That's a very common one that has been given. So first of all, a people without a land. There has been, very sadly, and it's very serious, about anti-Semitism across the world, and particularly in Europe in the last millennium. And you can see all the different expulsions from the different countries, and a lot of people settled in Arab lands. And again, very sadly and very distressingly, it ended in the Nazi Holocaust in 1945 with 6 million Jewish people plus 4 million others being murdered in the gas chambers and so forth. So yes, there has been a persecution of Jews, and there wasn't a named place that was particularly their own. However, there have always been Jewish people living in Palestine. The three religions did coexist mostly peacefully. The Crusades didn't do much for Christianity. They slaughtered a lot of people. There have been various different times over the last 2 millennium when people have fought on a religious basis. But before the British came, under the Ottoman rule, there was actually a peace among the three different religions. And Islam was the predominant religion, but there's a lot of records that show that people visited each other's religious experiences. They celebrated within the same village. So there was not a kind of religious stigma. The Christians there, which some people aren't aware of, the Christian community has been there for unbroken heritage from the time of Christ. The church on the right is the Church of the Holy Nativity in Bethlehem, where Jesus was said to have been born. And the church on the left is the Holy Sepulchre, where Jesus' tomb, and they believe that Calvary was there. So that the Christians there are the natural inheritors. They are the indigenous people. They're not converts. And then Islam came to that area, and some people were converts and some people moved in, but there was not a takeover of Muslim people. It became part and parcel of what that land was about. And again, in the last 400 years before the time of Israel, the Ottoman Empire took over. And so again, it encouraged Islam, but it didn't block or stop anything to do with the other religions. There was no problem being a Christian. And in fact, the Holy Sepulchre Church is managed for centuries by two Muslim families, even today, who have the keys to the Holy Sepulchre. So you can see that there were as a population of all three different peoples at that time. And statement 4, after the Second World War, the world wanted to give the Jewish survivors a safe home. Well, there certainly was a lot of international guilt at that time. People saw what was going on to a certain extent, not as much as we see today. But was that when everything started? No, the rise of Zionism started in the 1800s, and particularly with Herzl, Theodor Herzl, who was the father of modern Zionism. And he wrote in 1895, "We shall try to spirit the penniless population across the border by procuring employment for it in the transit countries while denying it any employment in our own country." That was the very, very beginning of Zionism with a plan to ethnically cleanse Palestine. I'm sure you've heard of Ben-Gurion, the founder of the State of Israel. And he said, "We must expel Arabs and take their places. And if we have to use force, then we have force at our disposal." And he wrote a lot in his diary. "The compulsory transfer of the Palestinians from the valleys proposed by the Jewish state could give us something we never dreamed of. We're given an opportunity which we never dared dreamed of in our wildest imaginings." And he was planning 20 years before the end of the Second World War. And again, the first president said, "The indigenous Palestinian population was like the rocks of Judea as obstacles that had to be cleared on a difficult path." So nothing can be said that this is a recent thing. And leading up to the birth of the Israeli state, the Nakba happened before people talked about that. And I'm going to be very quick, I can see the time. So the Jewish militia actually ethnically cleansed and systematically blew up 530 villages. This is very well documented in Ilan Pappé's The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, which I really, really encourage you to read. 750,000 Palestinians out of a population of 1.9 million total were forced to be refugees into other countries through the blowing up and the shifting of their villages. The Zionist forces by that time had taken 78% of historic Palestine and killed about 15,000 Palestinians, some of them in massive massacres that were covered over later by parks, car parks, plantations. And the British, who had a mandate to look after the indigenous people, stood by or sometimes actively disarmed the Palestinians. So this just shows you 530 towns clearing out that part that we know of now as modern Israel and where people were forced, which is why there are still refugee camps now. So I'm just going to very quickly move on. So in the 1967 Six-Day War, Israel planned that very thoroughly. It took 6 days to take over the entire area, including the Sinai and including the West Bank. From that moment, they occupied all of Palestine, historic Palestine. And from that moment on, they were Palestinians have been under Israeli military rule. There have been many peace processes, and Israel has been told to leave the West Bank and leave Gaza many times, including under Oslo. But as you can see from this, the Israeli illegal settlers, the occupiers, are still planting their towns more and more, and they've broken up Palestine into tiny, tiny little bits, which I'm sure my friends will tell you more about. So I'm just going to show you again the comparison with what happened to the United States, 1492, fully indigenous, and then 2022. And again, I'm going to come back right at the end and just remind us about the various different human rights and international laws, just to wrap it up. But thank you. Hopefully I didn't waffle too much and didn't take too much extra time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. That was such a lot of information, and I'm sure loads of us will be going back and rewatching it. I've also put up a lot of links to some of the information for further reading for everybody. So thank you so much for that, Linda. That was very, very insightful for us. Thank you. And next, I'm going to welcome Phoebe and Caitlin. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Go for it.
Hello, everyone. Do you want to get up the PowerPoint
Yes,
while
I'll
I
get up the
talk?
PowerPoint.
So, I'm Caitlin, and this is Phoebe, and we are from Grapevine Theatre CIC. Should be able to see that now. Is that all good? Yeah, amazing. So, who are Grapevine Theatre? That's us. And we create community events using theatre. We connect different communities together to create long-lasting relationships. We do this in lots of different ways at lots of different places, but some of those places include festivals, street theatre, community centres, and of course, traditional theatre spaces. We also create professional socio-political productions. We feel that every community has something to say, and our way of facilitating saying that is by using theatre. So yes, next one. So before we went on the delegation, we had worked with this organisation, Anna Bethlehem. And yes, Anna is a community organisation that works with young people to improve the lives of Palestinian children living in Bethlehem. They do this by providing psychosocial support and activities that help with mental health and building communities. They aim to break the cycle of oppression that young people living in Bethlehem and living in Palestine face. So the project we did with them, we worked with the older group that you can see in the pictures here. This group of young people, they wrote together. We wrote a poem based on beauty, and this poem was then used in a blended workshop at a festival where they joined us online and we were in person at Greenbelt Festival. We used this poem as a stimulus to then work with the festival goers to create another part of the poem to facilitate a conversation using beauty as the starting point where we could go off and find different places to where we find beauty. So some of the places that stood out to us that we visited was the Siraj Library Project. This is an amazing project of 13 libraries across the West Bank. We specifically visited the Storytelling Centre. This is the pictures that you can see here. Where in this story centre they run a 3-year storytelling course. We got to join an online event where it was Palestinian women sharing traditional stories and sharing their stories, and it was just amazing. These women, the way they can tell stories, wow. Yeah, we felt really connected with this organisation as theatre people because they encourage using storytelling to tell the lived experiences of the Palestinians that they work with, and they tell it in such a beautiful way. We met this lovely lady in the middle here, Fida. She's the leader of the project, and she shared some traditional Palestinian folk tales. She shared them while we were all sat in the garden that you can see on the bottom left there. And yes, the way they got these traditional folk tales was through their storytelling marathon. Now, I do hope that you will go and find the Siraj project, scan it on your phone if you can, and learn about their storytelling marathon, because it's just a crazy project that they did, and it connected multiple generations of Palestinians through sharing stories about their homeland, about their life. And at this storytelling centre is the garden that you can see down there. That's called their ancestral garden. And the ancestors' garden was started by one woman who didn't have her garden anymore. And she went to Fida like, oh, please, can I start gardening here? Because I don't have my garden anymore and that's my hobby. And Fida was like, yes, do it. And it was just such a lovely story to hear about. So yes, have a look at Siraj. The next place that really stood out to us was Eyewitness Silwan. Eyewitness Silwan is a collective of artists that put up murals on the sides of buildings that are set to be demolished or have eviction notices. They function mainly in Silwan. Silwan is a Palestinian village that has been under threat by settlers as they are moving settlers in after evicting Palestinians from their homes. And they are demolishing houses in this area. Some of the houses they're demolishing is to create the King David Park. That park would only be accessible to settlers. Eyewitness Silwan uses the eyes of activists from across the world. This links the world with the struggles that are happening in Silwan and the oppression of the people there, but it also links the people in Silwan to the struggles that are happening across the world. And that I found such a beautiful way of activism using art to link the world together. And we also visited the home of Fakri, this gentleman here. We visited his home, and him and his wife let us into their home in Silwan, and we stayed in their caravan style home that is next to the site of their demolished family home that you can see the picture of here. He left the rubble as a form of protest. He allows the media in as a form of protest. He allows tour groups like us so he can share his story of what happened to him and what's been going on with him and the updates, because it's not just now that his home's not there and he lives in a caravan. It's still going on, the issues. And one story that really hit us hard was the story of his grandchild came home from school one day and saw their house like this, and that was really a tough thing for us to hear, but obviously he's living through it, and that's kind of leads us on nicely to what we're doing next. Yes.
So yeah, as we said, we are theatre makers and storytellers, and so we didn't want the stories that we heard to just stop with us, and so we are writing a kind of storytelling play, interactive theatre experience based on the stories to advocate for Palestinians further, and hopefully encourage a few more audience members who wouldn't normally engage with the topic. So our show is inspired by the kind of storytelling techniques of Siraj, and the working title is Olives and Occupation, because we like alliteration, but it is a working title. And our idea is to kind of strip back political theatre and really look at storytelling as one of the most powerful forms of activism, because you can look at policies and statistics as much as you like, but what makes people care is the story of real people. So that's kind of where we're trying to go with our political theatre. So the setup of the play that we're writing at the moment is kind of based in Siraj, with a narrator who has a suitcase that they bring out different props that inspire the next story to be told. So if you don't mind, I'm going to perform two of the kind of extracts of the play so far. It is a work in progress. So bear with it. So the first part of the play, we are welcomed in by the narrator who is set at Siraj Library. So I'll just read you the opening kind of start of the play. Welcome, welcome, come on in. It's here at the library our stories begin. You think a story is a human right, but here at Siraj it's a struggle and a fight. Israel comes to steal our stories, knock down our buildings and build on our bodies. They turn our library and homes into rubble, but we take our poems and share our struggle. Let's set the scene, tell where we are. In an old home Palestine, outer Ramallah. A woman greets us full to the brim of stories, performance, a contagious grin. She speaks of love, ghosts and families, ancestors' garden full of trees. An empty space by this story house. She asked permission and permission was granted, and in that spot an olive tree planted. The whole town came, the garden now theirs, to work together, to grow and to care. Yet in the distance, here in the West Bank, the oasis is ruined by dozer and tank. No bullet or builder or bomb or bulldozer can kill our words, take our stories over. So we've taken their tales and shared them with you. Now our fight continues, and yours can too. So that's our opening poem. And that character acts as the kind of narrator as they talk about different stories we hear. The next kind of segment of the play that I'll share, again, work in progress, is written in the second person narrative, and it's about home demolition. And it invites the audience to imagine it's their own home that's been demolished, to kind of create that relatability. So it's kind of quite general. It doesn't mention too many kind of cultural specifics, so that we can imagine it's our own. And you'll notice a kind of tone shift. It starts out quite light, and then it switches quite quickly. And that's to kind of really create a stark contrast. So if you don't mind, I will perform the next work in progress part of the show. You begin your morning as you normally do. Alarm rings. You snooze. It rings again. You hit snooze again. A third time, you decide perhaps you should get out of bed. You stayed up longer than you should have last night, so your eyes have a slight prickle to them. You rub your face with one hand and reach for the lamp with the other. As you flick it on, there is a moment as your eyes adjust. A moment of bright white as your room comes into focus. Clothes on your desk chair. You know the ones. Not clean enough to go back in the drawer, not dirty enough to go into the wash. You spot amongst them the jeans you're planning on wearing out today. This has been your room for a long time, and bears the marks of your residence within it. A jigsaw sits unfinished on your desk. You never saw the point of jigsaws, putting back together a photo which has been broken for you. But it was a gift, so you gave it a go. The painting is of your village years ago, the houses of your neighbours, before they were forced to move. You scan around the room in search of any ounce of energy that would get you out of bed and drive you through the day. Your childhood teddy sits at the foot of your bed, looking up at you. You used to sleep with it every night, so it looks stringy and quite sad. In fact, you had kept him in the cupboard for years, but for some reason recently you've moved him closer. He reminds you of the innocence of your childhood, which, like so many Palestinian children, was taken too young. But you feel lucky, because at least it's one comfort. Audience, we all have a bedroom. How did yours look this morning? Did your bed get made? What photos are up? A to-do list? Wash up, vacuum, iron? Does your room need a tidy? Have a look around the room you're in now. What 3 things can you see that are jumping out to you in your room? Your eyes glance at those 3 things, as well as the unfinished jigsaw, unmade bed, childhood teddy, clothes. Finally, you get up. You go. In a slight rush, you nearly forget your key. A quick breakfast with your family, you lock the front door and begin your day. 6:30. You've had a long day. You're normally back by 5, but your friends wanted to catch up more, so you sat together with a hot drink and spoke for an hour and a half, longer than normal. At the time you appreciated it, but now you just want to get home and slump on your bed and have dinner. Someone on the way home is cooking onions, tomatoes and garlic. Your stomach rumbles as you think about what your mum will be cooking now. You texted to say you'd be late, and as you take out your phone to ask what's for dinner, you realise she's still not replied. This is not unusual. She's probably lost her phone again. It often ends up in all kinds of places around the house. Once she lost her phone for over an hour, and the whole house was forced to make up a search party. Eventually, your uncle, who was around for dinner, found the phone in the fridge. There was a level of confusion until you found cheese on her desk and decided she'd probably put the wrong item back. This was a particularly serious case of her phone going missing. Usually it can be found in a matter of moments. The usual culprits are the back of the sofa, the kitchen windowsill, or the bowl that you're supposed to keep the keys in, but actually contains a cocktail of random items. In fact, you should probably throw a lot of them away, but you don't because you might need them someday. These include a mini screwdriver, a yo-yo, a row of staples, a bit of string, a small plastic box, and often your mum's phone. However, you'd expect that after being an hour and a half later than usual, she would have sought out her phone to text or call. Never mind, you'll be back soon. It's not a long walk, but the lack of sleep, long day and hunger is making it seem longer. You just want to be home. Finally, you round the corner to approach home, or where home should be. In your hand is that key you nearly forgot, but there's no front door. There's no home, just rubble. The neighbours comfort your family as you try to take in what's happened. You shiver, but it's not cold. Blocks of grey concrete, dust, metal bars which were once in the wall are now on show on the ground. In the corner of the rubble, your kitchen counter is the only recognisable thing which stands. You can see the neighbours' walls stand strong around the rubble for now. You tread over the rocks, the poles. Through your flimsy trainers, you feel the corners of the concrete as you scan the mess. Your eye is caught, and you see the scattered pieces of your jigsaw. You feel a pang of guilt as you know the edges and corners, the middle pieces, will not ever come together to recreate the painting on the box now. Your clothes are everywhere. In the rubble appears 3 items you remember looking at just this morning. But nowhere to be seen is that childhood teddy. Thank you, friends. That's a little extract from the storytelling, and we'll kind of vary up the different modes of storytelling we use. So obviously we heard poetry, and that was a kind of account, but there'll be various different ways that we do it, and a lot of it will be interactive as well. So we'd like to finish with just a kind of a small call to action. The first would be to go and follow all the organisations that are shared today. Links and QR codes and the like will be popping around. And the kind of the most important one for us is to read, to share and engage. Like we said, the stories are the most important thing. So sharing as many stories as possible is, in our opinion, the best form of activism. And of course, engage with Palestinian artists and organisations. And tonight, support Sabeel. Thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll be quiet.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. I could imagine I was there as you were reading the poems. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on without further ado to Lana. Thank you, Lana.
Sorry, I just want to share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
No.
We can't see it yet.
Okay, I'll just try again.
There it is. It's coming now.
Fantastic.
Yay.
Okay, we good to go?
Yes.
Hi everybody, my name's Lana Hashem. Today I'm going to be talking about we met many organisations when we were out in Palestine. A few of those talked about the prison system for Palestinians, child prisoners and adult prisoners. So I'll be going through some of that, some of the things that we learned from those organisations, and then I'll be taking you through some of the divestment campaigns that are happening in the UK. So I will just go to my first slide. So we met with War Child in Palestine, and they taught us a little bit about what's going on in the prison systems. So basically, believe it or not, I'm sure a lot of you are aware that there are Palestinian children in prisons in Israel. Now, Palestinian children have always been imprisoned in their droves, but since October 2023, there has been a frenzy of violence and mass arrests of children in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. Security police harass children on their way to and from school. Children are arrested and imprisoned for throwing stones or liking a post on social media. Israeli forces regularly carry out raids on refugee camps and impoverished areas. When children are under interrogation, they are actually threatened that their families will be harmed if they don't sign the confessions, which is written in Hebrew. So there is actually no comprehension of what these children are signing. They don't understand Hebrew. So children also, on top of that, are not offered any legal representation. Beatings and torture is common. Overcrowding with only rotten and rationed food is available. Lights are kept on all night with children forced to sleep on the floor, and the Israeli national anthem is blared all day and night. There's a lot of medical neglect, with showers rarely allowed and no soap provided, so there are many cases of skin diseases amongst the children in these prisons. So in terms of prison conditions for men, we met with the Bissan Centre for Research and Development at Adamir Prisoner Support and Human Rights Association. Again, similarly to what was happening with the children, since October 2023, imprisonments and arrests of men have ramped up exponentially. There is a starvation policy. Families and the Red Cross have been banned from visiting the prisoners. And only up until recently now that lawyers can now visit, but only for a 10-minute period with their clients. And Israeli officers are usually present in the room at the same time that they have those conversations. There are many cases of sexual assault. However, it is labelled as physical assault instead of rape. And it's very uncommon for an Israeli soldier to be put into court for any sort of rape allegations. On the rare occasions that they will be set free after a few months. So there are many detainees that have died during incarceration due to medical neglect, daily beatings and torture. Since 1967, Israel has detained approximately 1 million Palestinians, including tens of thousands of children. At least 4 out of 10 Palestinian men will spend time in Israeli jails, and 70% of Palestinian families have at least one relative that's been detained in prison. Now, our delegation group, every time we met the organisations, we would ask them, what can we do when we come home to help Palestinians, to advocate for them? In this case, Adamir did tell us that they think that the divestment campaigns in complicit companies would best serve the Palestinian cause. And now I'm just going to go into the divestment campaigns that are happening up and down the country. This is in relation specifically to council pension schemes, which are actually bankrolling genocide. So councils across London are investing billions in companies complicit in Israel's genocide, military occupation and apartheid in Palestine. The local government pension scheme funds invest in companies enabling Israel's crimes. The London Collective Investment Vehicle manages £34.4 billion for London councils. 7 billion of that is currently invested in companies directly aiding Israel's British-backed genocide in Gaza. Now, I'm a former employee of Haringey Council, and I was involved in the divestment campaign that started about 14 months ago within the workplace. The campaign is still being led by employees at Haringey Council to develop an ethical pension fund that ceases its complicity in Israel's grave abuses of Palestinian rights. There have actually been 3 deputations taken to the Pensions Committee urging them to divest from complicit companies. So there's a deputation from a community group comprising of local residents, from a Unison member and another from pension scheme members. Now, the council has kept pushing back about their fiduciary responsibility. That was the key word that they always came back with us. They're saying that that's their main priority to scheme members. However, they have formally responded to deputations stating they will be producing an ethical investment policy, but they haven't elaborated exactly what that will contain. So we've held internal meetings with employees to inform of where their pension funds are being invested. And there's now over 30 employees that are now members of that campaign at Haringey Council, and they'll be keeping the pressure on. We have faced opposition within the council. Posters advertising the meetings were actually taken down within 24 hours, and that became an HR matter. Many colleagues complained about the silence at the council regarding the genocide, and many said to me that they felt fearful to talk about the situation in Palestine with colleagues. There was and there has been a complete lack of support for those colleagues affected by events in Palestine. So there is also a campaign being led by Haringey residents who are collecting signatures for a petition to pressure the council to divest. And at a recent full council meeting, independent councillors proposed a motion for divestment with specific emphasis on Israeli weapons manufacturing companies. However, councillors were told the motion was in danger of being a hate speech when Israel and Palestine were mentioned, and they were forced to leave the meeting. A heavily reworded motion was put forward calling for ethical investments to avoid businesses that facilitate human rights abuses, but all wording on Israel and Palestine were stripped out of that motion. The motion was passed with all councillors voting in favour and basically referring it to the Pensions Committee to take that forward. It is important to note the legal aspects here. So in June 2024, UN experts issued a statement demanding that states and companies stop all arms transfers to Israel. They outlined that financial institutions' failure to prevent or mitigate their business relationships with these arms manufacturers transferring arms to Israel could move from being directly linked to human rights abuses to contributing to them, with repercussions for complicity in potential atrocity crimes. So just to sort of outline, it's a very long list in terms of the investments that Haringey Council is investing in, but these are some of the complicit companies, and complicit investments amount to £39.5 million. We've got Airbnb there, which is a company that has 200 holiday property listings in illegal Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank. Also East Jerusalem and the occupied Golan Heights. In addition, Airbnb's listings display that these properties are in Israel, not the occupied West Bank, which is actually built on stolen Palestinian land. We've also got Alphabet, who provides cloud computing services and other technologies for the Israeli military. We've got a British arms producer called BAE Systems, which manufactures a range of weapons and military technology used by Israel in its militarized attacks on Palestinians. And a few more that I'd just like to outline. We've got Boeing, which is the second largest arms manufacturer in the world, and that manufactures the Apache attack helicopter. And if you've been following what's happening in Gaza, those 2,000-pound bombs that are being dropped on Gaza are being carried by Apache helicopters. What was quite surprising was to find that Israel government bonds are being invested in, and those are basically bonds. Bonds are IOUs issued by a government to borrow money to support its spending. So when an investor buys a government bond, they are lending money to that government for a set amount of time. And lastly, I'll just outline Palantir, which is a US-based surveillance company who are in a strategic partnership with Israel's Ministry of Defense, and they are providing advanced AI tools to the Israeli military. So as I said, those are just a list of a few companies that I just wanted to highlight to you all. There are wins. Over the last 18 months, there have been many wins with councils committing to divestment. It's various on what those divestments are. Generally, it's usually arms manufacturing company, but some have gone so far to say about companies that are profiteering in the occupied illegal settlements. So they vary in terms of what they're doing, but we do have quite a list there, and it is growing. And momentum has definitely kicked off. So my call to action to you guys is you can get involved in these campaigns with your councils. There's a database here below, which is you can find out where your local government pension scheme invests in, the companies that they're investing in. You can write to elected local councillors to ask they take immediate action to ensure that their LGPS funds administered by their council are not enabling Israel's war crimes. And you can actually find your local, so many councils have got some kind of active petition going on, so you can actually just literally take you 2 minutes to put your name on there. Once it hits a certain amount of petitions, a certain amount of signatures, then it has to be debated at a full council meeting in terms of divestments from complicit companies. So if you go and do your petition, if you sign that petition, sign it, share it amongst your local friends and family and groups. And you can also get involved in local resident groups that are campaigning for divestments in their boroughs. And I can assure you, you'll meet some great people if you get involved in those campaigns. And I'd just like to finish off on this note. So this is the wonderful journalist Hussam Shabat, who was from Gaza. He was murdered in March 2025. Before his death, he was put on Israel's hit list and killed by an Israeli airstrike on his car in Beit Lahia in Gaza. As I'm sure some of you are aware, there's well over 200 journalists that have been killed in Gaza. It is a form to silence the voice of what is actually happening there. His last message to the world, I think he wrote it in an article. He said, "I ask you now, do not stop speaking about Gaza. Do not let the world look away. Keep fighting, keep telling our stories until Palestine is free." And I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Lana. Oh, that was heavy to hear, but important for us to hear. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And next, I'd love to invite Wayne to speak to us, please.
Hello, everybody. As Claire said, my name's Wayne, and I was part of this incredible delegation to Palestine. I'm going to give you a little bit of context before. Can you see the screen? I'm going to give you a little bit of context before I start. And a celebration of demonstration is a company and organization I set up a few years ago. And I'm a photographer, but I suppose I've kind of always been into pictures. You know, before I started taking pictures, I was in pictures. My mum has an extensive photo album, and I suppose being in pictures or working with pictures has been the one thing that has stayed with me. If you can't tell, I'm the cute one in red pants. Bay City Rollers, go Bay City Rollers. I suppose so. My earliest memory of photography would have started about 20 years ago, taking pictures of my kids at home, and I suppose, you know, my relationship with photography began at this point. Some years later, 2017, in fact, when I took this picture, I was brave enough to start calling myself a photographer. You know, prior to this point, it was always a bloke with camera. But I wanted to take pretty pictures. I was taking pretty pictures. And then in 2020, that completely changed. We all witnessed in horror the murder of George Floyd. And this was my introduction to what I then became. I became a visual activist. There were the questions in my mind were, do Black Lives Matter? And I was struggling with what I was seeing happening on the streets of London and how it was affecting me. And what happened is that I got angry. And at this point, I wasn't sure what I needed to do. And then the universe simply said, record it. So I grabbed my weapons and started to shoot all of the anger as I saw fit. And that began my journey into visual activism. At this point, I was taking pictures at the BLM marches, and I brought out my first book, which was a celebration of demonstration, which was in effect a visual representation of the politics as I saw them on the streets of London. So I couldn't stop. I was taking pictures at different demonstrations. I was taking pictures at a number of different protests I was going to. And then October 7th happened. If I'm honest, I didn't know a hell of a lot about what was happening in Palestine. My knowledge was limited. But what I got from this was, again, the same thing I was seeing when I was taking pictures during the George Floyd demonstrations. You know, oh, my next screen's not coming up. Do brown lives matter? And again, I was just seeing this complicity from the politicians who were speaking and the press and how it was being reported on. So at that point, I decided to bring out my second book, which was 7th of October, year one. And from there, I just went and I started capturing demonstrations that the pro-Palestinian demonstrations that I was shooting in London. What I was seeing were hundreds of thousands of people coming together to protest. I was seeing the solidarity. The solidarity just continued to amaze me. How people week in, week out would come together and would march on the streets of London. And for me, that was incredibly powerful, being part of of being a storyteller, telling the stories of resistance as I saw them on the streets. It was important for me to know that this journey was being felt by thousands, hundreds of thousands of other people. And in a way, that really helped push me on and kept me going. Week after week, I showed up, and week after week, I took pictures, trying to tell this powerful story. And not only was I there, but there were other people sharing their voices and sharing their positions and sharing their platforms to make sure that we were all made aware of what was happening. And it was great seeing that these people who would come to amplify their voices to make sure that everyone saw what was happening. Um, it was wonderful hearing the speakers, people who were pushing back against the alternative facts and fake news, to make sure that we all were able to witness what was happening. And I just really wanted to capture that. But I wasn't alone in capturing pictures. There were people from around the world who were sharing their stories, who were being the eyes and ears on the ground, so the world could see their reality. And for me, that was moving, that was important, and that was so necessary. I felt that the work that I was doing was bold. I felt that it was purposeful, and I felt that through visual activism photography, I was able to tell a story and to get people who, if they use visual means to communicate, this was such a powerful weapon. I felt that my work was bold and it was great. And then I came to Palestine, and wow, uh, everything that I thought I knew, you know, I just had to rethink that, forget what I thought I knew. Talking to people in Palestine, talking to families, talking to people who have had their homes destroyed was soul wrenching. And again, I got angry. Uh, and I believe that with me, anger is such a powerful tool in helping me to tell stories, such a powerful weapon in helping me to really, really get into the work as I see it. As Phoebe said earlier, we visited the home of Fakri Diab in the Silwan district. Fakri was a local land committee and a prominent Palestinian researcher advocating for the rights of the families living in Palestine who were facing demolition. This is a picture of his home after he applied for planning permission to get it increased. He was living with his children and his grandchildren, and instead they demolished it with all of his possessions in there. So again, being there and talking to people who were reliving the experiences that they had gone through, but in a very peaceful way. He invited 15 of us to his house. We sat down, we had dinner, and we spoke with him. And his composure was just amazing. This again is the picture that I took of the one of the is in the Silwan district of Palestine, where residents who face threat of displacement. In response, residents and international allies launched the Eyewitness Silwan, which is a global public art initiative featuring murals of eyes that are painted on people's houses. Now, I don't know if you can see, but on this picture, there are a number of eyes that have been painted on people's houses. And they're normally local or international leaders whose eyes get painted on. So for me, that again was such a powerful statement of solidarity and resistance. One of the other places that we visited was the Legi Center, which is located in Bethlehem's Ada refugee camp. It's a grassroots cultural center dedicated to providing education and developmental programs for refugee youth. The thing I love about this picture is on the roof of the Legi Center, next to the cemetery, the word hope is painted on the apartheid wall. And to be on the roof, living by the center or working there, and seeing this sign every day for me was just so moving. Yeah, that picture is one that really resonates with me. One of the workers, one of the staff members at the Legi Center, was this guy, and I cannot remember his name, so forgive me. But one of the things that I loved about resistance is the art. And there is so much art all over the West Bank. People paint. This is a wall of martyrs, people who have died in the occupation. And it was incredible to see how the residents, the locals, preserve the memory of those who have died. And that was something that was apparent all through the West Bank as I saw it. Murals, people remembering the fallen. And they just lit up this whole area. So for me, that was quite powerful. Art is everywhere. Even orange monsters get the chance to be immortalized on the apartheid wall. This was one of the images that I took, which again just filled my heart, because not only are there pictures of the martyrs, there's this sense of freedom. There is this sense of hope, and that is so apparent. It's what I call in spite of everything that's going on, there is still this urge, this call to be strong. I love this picture. This was a picture that I took of a feeder from the Siraj Library. Again, Phoebe spoke of this earlier. Frida would tell stories with her body, with her voice. And when I captured this picture, she was telling us a story and moving, and it was just powerful. And I loved the way how, you know, she spoke with the history and knowledge of the community and her faith. And you know, it's something that I saw all over Palestine. Back to the point of in spite of, you would still see traders out selling their wares and mixing with Westerners and people on the streets, and that was so encouraging. It was so lovely to see that, in spite of everything that they're living through, life goes on. One of the meetings that we had that really touched me is when we had the pleasure of being in the company of Palestinian artist Selman Monsieur. He told us stories of being an artist under occupation. One of the things that he said that I will probably carry with me for as long as I live was, he said, art is the language of feeling. And I completely resonated with that. And it was wonderful hearing his stories, how as a young man he would paint pictures, but his work would be vetted by the Israelis. If he wanted to exhibit it in certain areas, there were certain bits of art he wasn't allowed to show. And for him to come and sit with us, to break bread and to share his life was just stunning. So he's someone I don't think I will ever forget. So moving forward, I will be doing another book, and I will be doing it. I will be doing it. Sorry, with the Al Kamir University, the Dar Al Kalima University, and the Siraj Library. So we will be working together to bring out another book of photography and Palestinian art. We'll be using the art that the students have been making, and poetry, and pictures and paintings. My idea when I was invited on this delegation was to collect images that I could put in a book to show and share what my journey was. But being in Palestine and meeting the people that we met and speaking and seeing what I saw, it feels that it's more important that I give a voice to the incredible, talented individuals who I met. So that's exactly what I plan to do. So thank you very much. And if you want to find out more about my work, you can visit my gallery, which is in the Celebration of Demonstration, Unit 22, Market Road, Brixton Village. So thank you very much.
That was amazing, Wayne. Thank you. Please, can you put those details of your social media and where your gallery is in the chat so that people can take them down if they want to?
I will do.
Just amazing to see some of your photos. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Samia. Welcome, Samia. Oh, and I'm going to share slides for you as well, aren't I?
Thanks, Claire.
Welcome. Right, shall I start sharing now?
Yeah, I've got it on my phone as well, so I can see. So I'll tell you when to slide across.
Okie dokie.
And you'll have to just keep an eye on the time for me, although I've got my watch next to me. Hi, everybody. My name is Samia. I'm a British-born Palestinian with German-Italian heritage. I'm a playful creative and a visual and community artist. And my father was born in Jaffa in Palestine. And the first place we arrived at was in Jordan. We flew into Amman and we crossed into occupied Palestine over the Allenby Bridge. It's an easier route to take by all accounts than flying into Tel Aviv. And in Madaba, the town that we stayed in where we had our hotel we were picked up from, this photo that I took of the street sign, of course, is self-explanatory, Palestine Street. And I have that as my screensaver on absolutely everything. Next slide, Claire. Palestine Street. So my next slide is from my dad. One of the things that he's always taught me and that I have shared with many, many people, many activists over this past almost 2 years, is it nearly now? Hold, don't carry. This is about holding the humanity line. You know, we are being, there are those who choose to dominate and there are those like us who have empathy and kindness. And we need to hold on to that and do our best to keep that humanity within us because, we do not want to become like the human cruel. Next slide, please, Claire. And just briefly, my dad, as a young man, he just arrived in London. He got married to my mum. He came here to the UK and trained as an ophthalmic optician. He was also a justice of the peace. He served the community in this South London area for 45 years, saved thousands of people's lives. You know, as an optician, you see all sorts of diseases in the eye. And he was, as I said, a justice of the peace. And he used to delight in telling me, coming home and sort of recounting stories of the police, that he could tell the police were telling porcupines, and he used to side with the defendant a lot more than his other judges would. And my grandparents above, who I never met, they died. I was born in 1970. They were both gone by then. And Jaffa, I had the chance to take a detour to Jaffa one evening with my cousin who lives in Jerusalem. And the clock tower there is just near my grandfather's, who's pictured. It was just near his watch shop, and I sat on those steps where my where my dad would have sat, and all my uncles and aunties would have sat, and generations beyond before then as well, with my cousin, eating baklava and drinking hot chocolate. Baklava and hot chocolate is not a great combination, by the way. It's far too sweet. But what a delight to go to my dad's hometown. Next slide, Claire. Jaffa, by the way, it's completely different. You think you're actually at a coastal resort anywhere. I could have been in Europe being in Jaffa. It's absurd, really bizarre, really bizarre. So the creative cultural delegation, I also am a vocalist for my husband, and we have a solidarity single, and along came Jake from the Shan Vans, who is also an artist, and a friend of theirs called Stephen, who's from a band called Hertan, another Irish band. And our first night, we went to the Al Mamal Foundation of Contemporary Art and had a rehearsal for a performance that we did the next day. Now, the Al Mamal is a not-for-profit organization based in a former tile factory in Newgate in the old city of Jerusalem. It serves the Palestinian and international arts and culture community, its surrounding neighborhood, and the city's visitors through a program of exhibitions, live events and workshops. And since 1998, Al Mamal has been a hub for art, cultural vibrancy and learning, while building bridges with the world and honoring Jerusalem's own enduring qualities as a complex, culturally rich and ageless city. So it was a delight, next slide please, Claire, to actually have a folk night and perform. I actually ended up being a host of the evening, so that was just very random, and I'm very grateful for having that opportunity. So thank you, Claire, for asking me to do that. As I said, I performed our song Sunrise, and Jake shared his video of the Shan Van. I'd really like you to go and see that on YouTube. Look up the Shan Vans on YouTube. You will find the video there. It's a 10-minute epic music video. It's a mix of bilingual Irish and English, and it's in solidarity with Palestine. And it was put together as a collaboration with artworks supplied, more than 100 artworks supplied by global artists for that particular video. And it's raising money for Palestinian organizations working in Gaza. It was a year-long flagship music project, and absolutely urge you to go and seek that out. Jake has just recently been interviewed by Greg J. Stoker, a very vocal activist. So you can find that video on Colonial Outcasts, and I would recommend you go and follow Colonial Outcasts because they are analysing and giving a lot of information that we are definitely not seeing on mainstream media. And there's Stephen there, who is from the band Hertan. We were lucky to go and see the Hertan live at the Irish Cultural Centre in Hammersmith recently, with five of us, everyone that you've seen on there, apart from Claire and Wayne. We were all there in Hammersmith together, so that was a brilliant night. Next slide, please, Claire. That is a fantastic photo of by Wayne, taken of me performing Sunrise. I would urge you please to go and look up the song. Just look for me on YouTube, Samia Sunrise. Thank you. And donations, or if you buy the single or download it, all proceeds go to Heal Palestine from that. Next. And that's Jake and Stephen performing, rehearsing and performing. And the value of that night was that by the end of the evening, we had given joy and love and taken people's minds off things. And there were many tears and many hugs by the end of that evening from the audience members who were so grateful that we had brought our energy and vibrancy and our joy and life to what is really feels like a hopeless, unstoppable situation for the people living there. Yeah, a lot of people are panicking in those in East Jerusalem and the West Bank now, and for good reason. So it was an honor to be able to give them and lift their spirits momentarily for an evening. Next slide, Claire. So I'm not going to speak much about the Siraj Library because they've been mentioned already. However, I just want to say that they were founded on the belief that civic education is the best route to justice, human rights, and peace. They believe great libraries build great communities and that all people have the right to enjoy safe and beautiful public spaces. And they are really stories as resilience. They really are pulling the community together there. And I'm going to mention them again in a minute when I talk to you about a project that I'm going to be doing with them on July the 1st. Next. So the Dar al-Khalima University, you know, the third intifada is going to be a cultural intifada. That was said by Giuliano Mer Khamis, who was the son of the founder of the Freedom Theatre based in Jenin. And I took part in a theatre show in London called The Revolution's Promise. It was a rehearsed reading about the Freedom Theatre, and you can look up culturalintifada.com and find out there's a lot of resources and a lot of toolkits there about how you can use creativity as activism. And that is really where I sit in all of this. I use my playful, creative energy as my activism. So I was really, really delighted to hear the story of the Dar al-Khalima University. Dr. Reverend Mitri, he set that up. He had this, he knew that, you know, politics and religion will always be divisive. So he chose to focus on the arts and music and the humanities to set up a community, sort of a community center, which became a college, which became an arts college, which then became a university. So it was founded in 1995, and he basically, you know, saw how music, arts, and culture can bring people together to tap into the power of art for healing. And he mentioned ongoing traumatic stress disorder. They don't have post-traumatic stress disorder there. They have ongoing traumatic stress disorder. So who knows when any of this will end. They mentioned that, you know, art isn't a luxury, it's actually oxygen for those under siege, and this is the power of the arts. The challenges that the Dar al-Khalima University are facing are that the occupation are no longer granting year-long visas for visiting lecturers. He said, if you think freedom of speech is a thing, not in occupied Palestine, it's an illusion. Youth are at risk of administrative detention for speaking up. It's safer to speak in closed settings, not public settings. They become too restrictive. That's why a lot of their events now are happening in online Zooms, because it's harder, of course, to shut those down online. There's the restriction of movement means that if checkpoints are closed, it could take 12 hours to travel 30 kilometers. The financial situation is diabolical, and even so, the university has 2001 students taking online classes, and they have a culture of construction, not destruction. And they were the first to set up a restoration lab, the first in the Middle East to set up a restoration lab, focusing on art and music therapy as well. And they really want us to celebrate and share Palestinian arts and art by Palestinians. Next slide, please, Claire. That middle picture, actually, sorry, go back. I just wanted to show you these artworks here are by their students. And this is their students' response to everything that's been happening since October the 7th. And that centerpiece there is Indrajab. Which, yeah, sorry, just 335 bullets in that young girl, as we mostly know. Okay, sorry, I got emotional there. I wasn't expecting that. Next slide, please, Claire. Oh, and I've duplicated Suraj, so slide across again. And again. Thank you. So back one.
Oh,
I
sorry.
think that's okay. So this is just a saying that I've been using all year. They use weapons of mass destruction, division, and distraction, the antidote to be a weapon of mass creation. And we really all have that ability within ourselves. And that is what I plan to do now that I am home. Next slide, please. Advocating for the Palestinians through creativity. Let It Be a Tale is a silk painted banner that I take on all of the protests in London. It was inspired by Refat Al-Hari's poem, If I Must Die, Let It Be a Tale. Next slide. And silk painting is the basis of my project Brutal Tales, which I have launched since coming back. Actually, I've done a soft launch, I've done a couple of events, and I've got some more events coming up. And you can see that Wayne and Claire were both with me at the sort of first official one there. And either side of the flyer there from the event that I hosted on the 3rd of April are the artworks that the audience members contributed. So Brutal Tales is the brutality and the beauty of the stories from Palestine. And beyond, actually. I'm going to be expanding the project, but we are focusing first and foremost on Palestine. And the audience were invited to respond creatively, visually, to what they saw and what they heard. And those drawings of theirs are with me now. Next slide, please, Claire. And those will be put onto silk fabric. I ran a project, one of my first projects, Semi Out on the Silk Road back in 2008. Actually, what launched me as a community artist. And these are images here of a 5-meter Silk Road in action. The designs, these ones were done by children, 400 children from a school on an event and taken to the high street and then painted by passers-by. So how this Brutal Tales is going to work with the Silk Road is that silk roads will be created between London and between the UK and Palestine in both partner locations, and then exhibited again in both partner locations. Next slide, please, Claire. I'm speaking quickly now because I think I've gone over my 10 minutes. Brutal Tales, please follow the Instagram to find out where I will be next with that. I do plan to tour it. And I am having an official launch on June the 21st. You're hearing about it first here now. That will be at Oru Sutton, and I've got a couple of key speakers joining me for that event. The co-founder of the venue and a British-born Jordanian TV personality is going to be my special guest speaker at that event. And I'll be launching a crowdfunder to continue this. And on July the 1st, with the Siraj Libraries, we have a storytelling event set up. And again, if you follow the Instagram.com Brutal Tales link there, then you will be able to find out how to join those Zooms or come in person and book tickets. And yes, and I will finish with simply saying, again, back to my dad. He always said to me about Palestine, Samia, resolve the problem in Palestine and watch many of the world's problems disappear. And I believe that we are all seeing that so clearly now. Thank you very much to Sabeel for taking us on this transformative trip to my homeland, to occupied Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samia. Thank you. Okay, wow, that was a bit of a marathon, wasn't it? I wish we'd had more time to kind of really hear more from each person. We're going to finish now with bringing Linda back to just kind of tie up everything that's been said tonight, looking at the human rights of Palestinians. So, Linda, if I can welcome you back, please.
Thank you very much. I'll just get my PowerPoint. Oops, sorry. Best laid plans.
It's fine, take your time.
Right. Okay, there we go. So my part feels quite cold actually compared with everybody else's, because it has been a total privilege to be among the most beautiful, incredible, resilient people in Palestine. So I also feel quite emotional. And the reason I really like these facts is because part of the story that's happening at the moment is the complete fabrication of what's really happening and the truth that isn't being told. And so this is just to finalize, just to give you really a little bit of a snapshot again and to remind us what is supposed to happen and to give a visual experience of what isn't happening. I assume everybody can see the screen now. So we're looking at the United Nations, the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights for everybody, and the most basic Article 1, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. And the picture you see just highlights the difference, because in the front it's a Bedouin community who are fixed to the land. They're not allowed to move or else they'll lose the land. And in the background you will see the illegal settlement and the quality of housing that they have. And the example of that is the water quality, that nobody has water in Palestine, but unless it's piped from Israel, which is only piped a couple of times every fortnight, but the illegal settlements have swimming pools in a lot of their houses. There's also, when people dispute the issue about apartheid, I want to give you the evidence, really. So the second article, everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms without distinctions such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political, etc. The Israel nation state law, and I don't like the language, but it is enshrined in their law. So the land of Israel is the historical homeland of the Jewish people in which the state of Israel was established. Third point, the realization of the right to national self-determination in the state of Israel is exclusive to the Jewish people. Is exclusive to the Jewish people. There is no opportunity to deny that that is apartheid. Israel's 2011 admissions committee law. They have a committee in every setting, the people who live locally, who decide social suitability. So obviously this can be used for any particular prejudice, but there's no way a Palestinian would be allowed to live, even if they were Israeli by nationality. Article 3 of the Human Rights, the United Nations Declaration. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. This is a photo from the Ada camp in Bethlehem, the historic refugee camp, and you see the blue gate, which is where the military come in, and you see the Israeli army sniper point. And you can see on the left, there's a little insert, which is a poster of a boy who's 12 years old, and he was standing against a lamppost outside the youth centre when he was sniped. And we were told that it takes two people to sniper somebody, because one has to fix the view and the other has to shoot. So two people aimed at a 12-year-old. Article 5. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. This was one family that we met who you may, if you've seen the film 5 Broken Cameras, They peacefully protest when the apartheid wall was first of all a fence because it went through their fields and blocked them. And there's a film about that I encourage you to watch, Five Broken Cameras. And every male member of that family has been in prison. We were very lucky to share an iftar meal with them. And one of the sons showed us the X-ray, which showed that before he was released, and this is very common for prisoners, his arm was broken very neatly in about 8 to 10 places. It was shocking to see. And they were not accused of anything. They were picked up because of their peaceful protest. Again, we've seen many pictures like this. I wanted to just use one to be most shocking, but there's many that we don't see. Article 9, no one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. Lana covered a lot about the prisoners. And again, Israel currently holds almost 10,000 prisoners. Only 1,471 have a sentence. And Ben Gvir is currently going around America trying to get the death penalty brought back, despite the fact that 3/4 of prisoners have no charge. Article 12, the right to marry and start a family. The guy on the left, Zubi Zubi, some of you who may know him, he runs a human rights project. His wife is American passport. He's not allowed to live with her. She's not allowed to go to Palestine. He's not allowed to go to her. She's been banned from Palestine despite being American, and he paid $20,000 one time to Israel to guarantee that she would leave. They still said no, and they never gave his money back. And this is fairly common where families are split and children sometimes have no documentation. UDHR Article 13, everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state. Everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country. The 1950 Israel Law of Return, every Jew has the right to come to this country. Section 4A, the rights of a Jew under this law also include a child, a grandchild of a Jew, the spouse of a Jew, the spouse of a child of a Jew, and the spouse of a grandchild of a Jew. You only have to be technically 1/4 in order to be able to come and have a house in a settlement, possibly with solar panels and a swimming pool. But the Palestinians have no rights. So on the bottom left, a house that's been demolished multiple times overlooking a massive settlement. On the right, a settler who has taken over somebody else's land. UN Resolution 194, 11th of December 1948. The UN General Assembly resolves that the refugees wishing to go home and live in peace with their neighbours should be permitted to do so at the earliest practicable date, and that compensation be paid for the property of those not choosing to return and for the loss or damage to the property. Never happened. Article 17, nobody shall be arbitrarily deprived of their property. This is a very important thing, the Adalah Discriminatory Laws Database. You can look up the 65 discriminatory laws, and there's more in the process. I want to just pick out a few. There's ones about education and all different ones, but that's a very important project to look at. And there are many Israeli and Palestinian projects that actually look at the discrimination, and they monitor not just Palestinian, but Israeli organizations also speak about the discrimination and the apartheid. This has already been put up on your chat. So there's lots of different people. If you want to know the truth, follow loads of the people at the bottom and loads of the different articles and books that can give you factual information as well. But thank you very much. I won't talk anymore. I think it's back to Claire. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda, for all that information. That was very informative. Thank you, and really important for us to hear as well. We're actually out of time. We were planning on having a question and answer time, but I do want to respect the fact that we said we'd stick to an hour and a half. So what I'm going to say, I think, is if all the delegates are happy to stay on for maybe another 10 minutes, if anyone does have any questions they want to ask, please do feel free to stay on. Otherwise, I just want to say a massive thank you to each person who shared tonight. I just think you all were brilliant. and there was so much useful information. It was so good to hear your stories and your experiences and your honesty with us all about how you experience Palestine and the Palestinian people. So thank you all so much. And then, of course, thank you to everyone else who's joined. I hope that you've enjoyed the journeys to justice that you've heard about this evening. And I think you'd probably all like to join me in just saying a massive thank you to everyone who spoke this evening. You're all amazing. Thank you so much. So do feel free to leave now at this point. I'm actually going to stop the recording for the questions and answers. But yeah, thank you so much. I will send out an email tomorrow with all the links for the different links that were shared in the chat to everybody who is here this evening. But yeah, do feel free to leave unless you have a question you'd like to ask. Thank you.